After enduring a drunk heckler through multiple songs, the man finally rushed the platform and tackled Frank Sinatra to the ground in front of hundreds of screaming fans. The microphone hit the floor, the band stopped cold, and for the first time in his legendary career, Old Blue Eyes looked vulnerable. But what Frank did next didn't just silence the room. It made international headlines and revealed the kind of man he really was behind the untouchable persona. What could he have possibly said to a man who just attacked him that turned a moment of violence into one of the most powerful acts of his entire career? The year is 1978, and Caesar's Palace in Las Vegas is the center of the entertainment universe. Outside, the Nevada desert radiates heat even after sunset, the temperature still hovering near 90 degrees. But inside the main showroom, the air conditioning battles against the warmth of 1,500 bodies packed shoulder to shoulder. Crystal chandeliers catch the light like frozen fireworks above a sea of tuxedos and evening gowns. Cigarette smoke drifts upward in lazy spirals, mixing with expensive perfume and the sharp tang of gin martinis. The carpet beneath their feet is so thick it swallows the sound of footsteps, replaced instead by the constant murmur of conversation, laughter, and the clink of fine glassware. This is the kingdom Frank Sinatra built, one sold-out show at a time. The showroom itself is a temple to excess and elegance. Red velvet booths line the perimeter, each one occupied by celebrities, mobsters, politicians, and oil tycoons who've flown in from Houston just for tonight. The tables closer to the stage are reserved for the true VIPs, the ones whose names you'd recognize, the ones who get personally escorted to their seats by the house manager himself. Waitresses in short gold dresses and heels that could puncture concrete navigate the narrow aisles with trays of champagne balanced on their fingertips. At the bar in the back, 3 bartenders work in synchronized efficiency, pouring endless rounds of Jack Daniels and scotch on the rocks. The house lights dim. A hush falls over the crowd, broken only by the clink of ice in glasses and the whispered excitement of tourists sitting next to high rollers who've seen this show a dozen times. They never get tired of it. Neither do the regulars at the bar, the pit bosses taking a break from the casino floor, or the cocktail waitresses who pause their rounds to watch. When Frank Sinatra takes the stage, everyone stops. Conversations end mid-sentence. Drinks are set down. Even the busboys freeze with their trays of dirty dishes. It's respect. It's anticipation. It's the promise of witnessing something that doesn't happen anywhere else in the world except in this room on this night. The orchestra, dressed in matching burgundy jackets, sits ready. Conductor Bill Miller raises his baton, his white hair catching the stage lights. The musicians hold their instruments in that perfect stillness that comes right before the downbeat. Violins poised, trumpets raised. The drummer's brushes hovering over the snare. The spotlight hits center stage, empty for just a moment longer than comfortable. Then he appears. Frank Sinatra. 62 years old, but moving with the confidence of a man who owns every room he enters. The tuxedo is impeccable, tailored to perfection on Savile Row. Probably cost more than most people in this room make in a month. The trademark fedora sits at that familiar angle. His shoes are polished to a mirror shine. His cufflinks catch the light. His face, that famous face that's been on magazine covers and movie screens and album jackets for 40 years, looks exactly like America expects it to look. That legendary gaze, the one that launched 1,000 headlines, scans the room with a mixture of warmth and calculation. He knows this crowd. He's worked rooms like this since before some of these people were born. He can read an audience in 3 seconds flat, knows whether they're here for the music or the spectacle, whether they're drinking heavy or pacing themselves, whether tonight will be easy or whether he'll have to work for it. The applause is thunderous. Frank lifts one hand in acknowledgement, a slight smile playing at the corners of his mouth. He wraps his fingers around the microphone stand with the ease of someone who's done this 10,000 times before. The band swings into the opening notes of "I've Got You Under My Skin," and his voice cuts through the smoke and noise like a knife through silk, smooth and controlled, utterly perfect. The sound system carries every nuance, every breath, every subtle inflection that turns a song into a story. But an undercurrent runs through the room. Maybe it's the way Frank's jaw is set a little tighter than usual. Maybe it's the extra beat he takes between phrases, like he's conserving energy. Maybe it's the way his hand grips the microphone stand just a fraction harder than necessary. Or maybe it's just the electricity in the air, that indefinable sense of impending disaster. 3 songs in, between the applause and the orchestra's transition, a voice erupts from somewhere in the darkness of the packed room, slurred yet aggressive, dripping with mockery. "Hey, Frankie, you're washed up." The room goes cold. Frank Sinatra doesn't stop singing. He's a professional, and professionals don't let drunk idiots ruin a show that people paid good money to see. His voice doesn't waver, his posture doesn't change. But he narrows his gaze slightly, searching the crowd, trying to locate the source of the interruption. The band plays on, following Bill Miller's baton, but even they've noticed. The trumpet player glances at the drummer. The pianist's fingers continue moving across the keys, but his attention is divided. Frank continues through, "The lady is a tramp, but the magic has cracked. The room shifts uncomfortably. Women whisper to their husbands. Men loosen their ties. This isn't part of the act. This isn't the polished Vegas entertainment they came here expecting. What they don't know, what they can't know from their velvet-upholstered chairs and their $15 cocktails, is that he's exhausted. Bone-deep, soul-tired, exhausted. The kind that doesn't go away with a good night's sleep or a week in Palm Springs. He's been on the road for months, playing Vegas, then New York, then back to Vegas again. Because that's what legends do. They show up, they perform. They pretend the throne isn't getting heavier by the year. His schedule is brutal even for a young man, and he stopped being young a long time ago, even if his publicist and the newspapers still pretend otherwise. 2 weeks ago, his doctor told him to slow down. The appointment was supposed to be routine, just a checkup before the Vegas residency started. But the numbers weren't good. His blood pressure is too high, dangerously high. His heart isn't what it used to be. The doctor showed him charts and used words like cardiovascular strain and risk factors. He suggested canceling some shows, taking a month off, maybe thinking about retirement. Frank told the doctor what he tells everyone who suggests he take it easy. He'll rest when he's dead. But now, standing under lights that feel hotter than usual, his tuxedo collar suddenly too tight around his neck, his bow tie feeling like it's strangling him, Frank wonders if the doctor might have had a point. His left arm has been aching since yesterday. Probably nothing. Probably just slept on it wrong. There's other weight, too. The kind that doesn't show up on medical charts. The tabloids have been vicious lately, dredging up old stories and inventing new ones. They've been running pieces about his supposed mob connections again, rehashing the same tired innuendo they've been printing since the 50s. His last marriage ended badly 6 months ago, and the press won't let it go. Every week there's a new story, a new quote from an anonymous source close to the singer, a new photo of him leaving a restaurant with someone who's immediately labeled his mystery companion. His kids are worried about him. He can hear it in their voices when they call. They don't say it directly, but the concern is there, wrapped in casual questions about whether he's eating right, whether he's getting enough sleep, whether maybe he should take some time off. His friends, the ones who are still alive, and there are fewer of those every year, keep asking if he's okay. He tells them he's fine. He's always fine. He's the chairman of the board. The heckler shouts again, louder this time, emboldened by the previous interruption, and probably another gulp of whatever he's drinking. Sing something people actually want to hear. The shouts come from somewhere in the middle of the room, lost in the sea of faces. A few nervous laughs ripple through the crowd, the kind of uncomfortable laughter that happens when people don't know how else to react. Frank forces a smile, the kind he's used to deflect 1,000 drunken interruptions over the decades. "That's all right, pal," he says into the microphone, his voice still smooth, but with an edge now, a hint of steel beneath the velvet. "I've been booed by experts." The audience laughs, grateful for the tension break, relieved that Frank is handling it with his trademark cool. Frank signals the band with a slight nod. They launch into "My Way," but the heckler isn't finished. Throughout the song, the interruptions continue. Scattered shouts, slurred insults that get progressively louder and more aggressive, each one landing like a small punch. The crowd's laughter turns to irritation, then to concern. People start looking around, trying to identify who's responsible. Security moves through the aisles, trying to locate the source, but the drunk keeps moving. Emboldened by alcohol and attention, shifting from table to table like he's playing a game, by the time Frank reaches the final verse, the one about facing the final curtain and doing it his way. His trademark confidence has given way to raw vulnerability. Not quite anger, not quite resignation, just exhaustion. The weight of decades showing through. It makes him look, for just a moment, like exactly what he is. A 62-year-old man trying to do his job while someone deliberately tries to destroy it. He pushes through to the end, refusing to let the heckler win. The final note of "My Way" hangs in the air like a question waiting for an answer. Frank lowers the microphone, nodding to the orchestra, preparing to transition into the next song. The audience begins to applaud, relieved that maybe the worst is over, that the drunk has either passed out or been escorted away. But relief is premature. From the left side of the stage, near the orchestra pit, a figure stumbles forward. At first, it looks like someone's lost, wandered away from their table in a bourbon-fueled haze. The spotlight operator tries to track the movement, but loses it in the shadows. Security is moving, but they're too far away, blocked by tables and chairs and people standing to get a better look at what's happening. The man emerges into the light, and everything becomes clear too late. He's in his 40s, disheveled, his shirt untucked, his face red with alcohol and unprocessed fury. Rage, perhaps, or pain disguised as aggression. He's moving faster now, no longer stumbling, but charging. His gaze is locked on Frank with an intensity that turns the moment from uncomfortable to dangerous. Frank sees him. There's a flash of recognition across his face, not of the man specifically, but of the situation. He's been heckled before, he's dealt with drunks, he's even been threatened, but this is different. This man isn't stopping, he's not yelling anymore, he's running. The collision happens in slow motion and all at once. The heckler crashes into him like a linebacker taking down a quarterback. Bodies tangle, arms flail. The microphone stand topples with a metallic crash that echoes through the sound system. Frank hits the floor hard, his shoulder taking most of the impact, his fedora flying off and spinning across the polished wood like a lost coin. The sound that erupts isn't a scream, it's deeper than that. A collective gasp that sucks all the oxygen out of the room. The orchestra lurches to a cacophonous halt, instruments cutting off mid-note, violins screech. The drums hit a final accidental crash. Then silence. The kind of silence that feels like the world has stopped spinning. Bill Miller stands frozen, baton still raised, his mouth open in shock. The trumpet player is half out of his seat. A cocktail waitress drops her tray, and the sound of shattering glass punctuates the moment like an exclamation point. Security finally arrives, 3 large men in dark suits who pull the heckler off Frank with professional efficiency. The drunk is still shouting, still fighting, but his words are incoherent now, just noise and fury. They drag him toward the wings, his feet scraping against the polished wood, leaving dark scuff marks behind. 1,500 people are standing now, some moving toward the stage, others frozen in place, hands covering their mouths. He lies on the stage for what feels like an eternity, but is probably only 3 seconds. His tuxedo jacket is twisted, one arm trapped beneath him. For the first time in his storied career, Sinatra looks exactly like what he is, a 62-year-old man who just got knocked to the ground. Not a legend, not old Blue Eyes, not the chairman of the board. Just a man, vulnerable and human and hurting. Someone from the orchestra rushes over. Bill Miller is there, kneeling, asking if he's okay. A woman screams from somewhere in the crowd. Camera flashes go off, tomorrow's headlines being written in real time. Security is radioing for medics. The house manager is running down the aisle. Everything is chaos and movement and panic. And then Frank moves. He pushes himself up slowly, one hand pressing against the stage floor, the other reaching for Bill Miller's outstretched arm. There's a wince that crosses his face. Pain, maybe from his shoulder, maybe from his pride, but he waves off the immediate rush of people trying to help him. "I'm okay," he says, though his voice is quieter than before, missing that microphone amplification. "I'm okay." Someone retrieves his fedora. Someone else picks up the microphone stand. Frank adjusts his jacket, brushing off invisible dust, straightening his bow tie with his fingers that aren't quite steady. The room watches in stunned silence. This is the moment where legends either crumble or cement their status forever. Everyone knows it. Frank knows it most of all. 2 medics arrive with a medical bag, but Frank holds up a hand. "I'm fine," he says, louder now, more of that familiar authority returning. "Really, I've taken worse hits from critics." A few nervous laughs ripple through the crowd. The tension breaks slightly like ice beginning to thaw. But Frank isn't looking at them. His eyes are fixed on the wings where security is still restraining the Heckler. "Wait," Frank says. "Hold on a minute." Everyone freezes. Security stops dragging the drunk away. Bill Miller looks confused. The house manager seems ready to object. Frank walks toward the wings, moving a little slower than usual, one hand briefly touching his ribs. The spotlight follows him, creating a narrow tunnel of light in the darkness. Every patron leans forward collectively, trying to see what he's doing. When Frank reaches the Heckler, he's close enough to smell the whiskey, to see the broken blood vessels in the man's eyes, the stubble on his jaw, the stains on his shirt. Up close, the aggression has drained away, replaced by pure despair. The man is crying now, mumbling apologies that don't make much sense. He looks lost, broken, human. Frank studies him for a long moment. The old Frank, the one from the tabloid stories, the one with the legendary temper and the powerful friends, would have had this guy thrown out and possibly worse. Everyone expects anger, retribution. At minimum, they expect Frank to walk away and finish the show. But he's been knocked down, literally, and everything has shifted in that collision. Maybe it's exhaustion finally breaking through the armor. Maybe it's recognition of himself in this broken man. Of all the times Frank himself has been drunk and angry and lashing out at a world that won't leave him alone, maybe he's just tired of being the king and wants for one moment to be a man. "What's your name?" Frank asks quietly. The drunk looks up, confused, tears streaming down his face. "Tommy," he manages. "Tommy!" Frank nods. "You having a rough time, Tommy?" The man breaks down completely, nodding, unable to form words. Frank looks at security, then back at Tommy. "Get him some coffee," he says. "Black, strong, and make sure he gets home safe. Call him a cab. I'll cover it." He reaches into his jacket, pulls out his money clip, peels off several bills, and hands them to security. "See that he gets there safely," he repeats. Security looks uncertain, but when Frank Sinatra tells you to do something, you do it. They nod. Their grip on Tommy, gentling from restraint to support. As they lead him away, Frank calls out, "Tommy, you okay?" The drunk nods, still crying. Frank nods back. "Okay, get some rest." Frank walks back to center stage. The microphone has been righted. His fedora sits waiting on top of the piano. He picks it up, settles it on his head at that familiar angle, and wraps his hand around the microphone stand. The room is absolutely silent. 1,500 people holding their breath. "Ladies and gentlemen," Frank says, his voice filling the room again with that old authority, that timeless charm. "Where were we?" He looks at Bill Miller. "Count it off, Bill." The orchestra launches into "Come Fly With Me," and he sings like nothing happened, but everything happened. Everyone present knows it. They're not just applauding between songs anymore. They're standing, cheering, some openly crying. Because they didn't just witness a performance. They witnessed grace. They witnessed a legend choosing compassion over ego, humanity over image. The story spreads before the show even ends. By morning, it's in every newspaper from Vegas to New York. But the headlines don't read "Sinatra attacked on stage." They read, "Sinatra shows mercy to Heckler, who tackled him." The wire services pick it up. Television news leads with it. Radio hosts discuss it between songs. Frank doesn't do interviews about it. He doesn't need to. That one moment, standing on a stage with a sore shoulder and a bruised ego, choosing kindness when everyone expected rage, says more about who he really is than 1,000 magazine profiles ever could. Not the carefully crafted legend, not the chairman of the board, not even old Blue Eyes, just Frank. A man who got knocked down and chose to lift someone else up on his way back to his feet. Years later, long after Sinatra takes his final bow, people who were there that night still tell the story. Not about the tackle, about what came after, about the moment a king remembered what it meant to be human, about the night he proved that true class isn't never falling. It's how you stand back up and who you help stand with you.